Welcome to a brand new episode on Radio with Pictures with Femlink Pacific and FemTalk 89 FM in conversation with diverse rural women leaders, members of the LGBT network and disability rights activists from across the country. I'm Nandini Vandana and thank you for tuning in. We've just concluded our second national consultation for 2018 and the focus this week has been on the rights of persons with disability and what we need to know. Joining us in this episode, we have Timeima Ralolokula, who is representing and is the president of the Velomani Women's Club. Thank you for being on the show. We also have with us Kajal Dutt of the Nari Shakti Youth in Nosori. Welcome, Kajal. And a very special guest, Lithia Naitanui, who is the president of the Women with Disability Rewa branch. Thank you for being on the show. We will start our conversations and we will start with Lithia and how can we as a community address the needs that persons with disability need when it comes to accessing information and disaster risk reduction management processes?
The women with disability as the leaders from the community which I belong to. The only thing that we want to have to be accessed into it as the leader of the women with disabilities should be part of that decision making, and also in order to get all those informations from our members, so that to be put it up so that we can know the needs of persons with disability around the community. If we have no representatives to represent us in that committee, not only in the committee but at all level, the representatives of people with disability or women with disability should be there in order to voice out the needs of people with disabilities in times of preparedness during disaster. And it also, he will know the needs, because no able-bodied persons can be the voice of persons with disability, because the needs is us or me who knows very much the needs that all the people with disability in the area or at all level. So it's me who is the voice of women with disability or people with disability at all levels, to be participated and to be part of that committee in all levels.
Do you feel then that media plays a very important role in terms of disseminating information, and what would be some of the barriers when it comes to accessibility of information from the media sources?
Like disseminating information. The different types of disability around here in Fiji, we have the different types in ways in which we get informations, because different disability, different impairment with different needs. So the only thing that we want to have is, if we learn or bring down the awareness to that level, from national to community level, to know how to get along with the different impairment and the different information to be sourced into them, so that they can understand whether the disaster is coming in within 48 hours, 24 hours, or it's within the country as a whole. So the different impairment needs different ways in which to get other informations from the different media, source of media that we have.
Thank you, Lithia. And Kajal, what does it mean for young people and preparing for the cyclone season come November?
For us young people, most of the time when we have our community meeting and other meetings, like we are not included, we are not in the part of the decision making, so most of the time our needs and wants are just left out. So I think there's a very big barrier that we need to break down now, and we need support from elders too. It's not that we don't want to listen to their point of view, but we also want them to listen to our point of view. So yeah, I think that is the barrier.
Okay.
Like we are not part of the decision making levels.
Now, there has been a lot of talk around not including diverse women leaders in committees. Is this something that you're faced with as well, Timema?
Yes. Staying in rural communities, I think that is also one of the barriers we're facing since we are about to reach a month of disasters. And I think another barrier is passing of information since we've been referring to Weather Watch, SMS, and when we're receiving the messages, we pass it on to the communities. And another barrier as well is the mindset of people when they're receiving the messages, the information. And another thing is the accurate information from the net department, since they have to teach us on what categories the intensity of the categories are about. And like for Winston, when they're talking about category 5, most of the people in our community, especially in rural communities, they don't even know what category 5 is. And they're not taking when they're receiving the information, they're not taking it seriously. So when the cyclone strikes, that's the time when they run around and they didn't know what to do. And then that's when there's a lot of damages and deaths happening in rural communities.
So we've talked about media. You feel that there really needs to be awareness on the terminology that is used when we are passing weather updates as well.
I really agree to that because especially living in rural communities, we really need awareness to come right to our level. And especially people living in the communities, their mindset is always in, they don't bother about what's going around and the information they're receiving. Most of them, they don't know simple languages that we are using. And I think we really need to have more awareness trainings for the advisory councillors as well to come down and have some get together informing the people, women in all diversities with what's going on.
Okay, thank you. And we will now take a break. Stay tuned because in our next segment, we continue the conversations around disability rights and disaster risk management. Thank you and welcome back. In this segment, we are looking at how can we address challenges that are faced by diverse women leaders in participating in decision-making spaces. Again, Lithia, we'll start with you. What are some of the challenges that are faced by persons living with disability to access decision-making spaces?
To my point of view is that most of persons with disability themselves, they look down upon them. Sometimes they look at the disability that they have, and that also applies to the community which we are, which we stayed in. The way they look at us through the disability that we have, that is some of the things that sometimes doesn't make us to go to be part of their decision making. And we cannot voice out what we want, because sometimes they look at the disability that we have, and also we cannot put up our voice in that committee because of the geographical states that we have. Sometimes where I stay and to where the meeting will be held in the community hall, it is not access. That is the geographical states, and that makes us cannot voice out, be part of that committee members, or make out the decision making, to be part of the decision making during the preparedness and about disaster risk.
What would be some of your key recommendations when it comes to then, that's a very interesting point you brought forward, like we can have numbers to say that we want persons living with disability included in those forums, but then having the resources and infrastructure for persons living with disability to access the venue is another issue. So what would be one of your key recommendations?
What I recommend this morning is to let government of the day see this the evacuation centers. Say like most of the schools have been made to be evacuation centers, and they are built to be for the school, for the school purpose. But for evacuation centers, it is not access to us. If the government of the day go through or review for the building code for the next few years ahead of us, to review again the building code of the national building code. They should check the building code to be accessible, because all buildings like in 90s and they are not accessible. All the schools which they have been put to be evacuated. Sometimes we people with disability, we don't feel like going to evacuation centers because we are familiar with our environment or our home. So most of people with disability don't feel like going to evacuation centers because our environment, we are familiar with our environment. That is the home where we stayed, rather than going to evacuation centers.
Thank you. And then, so that would mean that we need persons living with disability included in those committees so they can voice out those recommendations. Sure. Thank you. So, Kajal, you mentioned earlier about the non-inclusion of young people. What would you say are some of the challenges that you face, you as an individual, in accessing those spaces? You did mention there is non-inclusion, but would you say why there is non-inclusion?
For example, yesterday they had one tsunami drill in Suva. So my thinking was that, is there any young woman included in the decision making, so that even a disabled group is there or no? Because they were saying that this drill is about how to get to the safest point in 20 minutes. But my thinking was there that my sister here, she cannot reach to the safest point in 20 minutes. So are they doing something for them too, or for us too, that we can reach to that safest point? Yes. So that is the barriers that we are not included in the decision making process. So if you know, the system should change and let us in, so that we can be part of that all decision making, so it's easier for them and us too. So later on we don't have any disasters happening or someone losing their life in this sort of situations.
So would you say then that we need a number for that has to be allocated for young people to be involved in decision making space? Would that make it easy?
Yeah, that would probably make easy, because we will know what to do and when to do it, because we are left behind, so we don't know. Most of the time when they say it's a drill, we don't know where to go.
Okay. Yes. Key points. And so Timema, just following up from what Kajal has said, how do you think we can strengthen capacity of rural women leaders and diverse women to be participating in these decision-making spaces?
I think the only thing that we can do to strengthen women in participation is women need to be trained as well. Like we are attending, rural women leaders, most of us are attending consultations, and we need more trainings as well. And also we need to come out and participate, engaging ourselves with other networks, and to be inclusive in decision making at all levels, not only in a community, rural community level, but also in district and national level.
So would you say that we need 50% participation of women in all levels of decision making?
Yes, I really agree to that.
Okay, thank you. And those were the discussions around the challenges that diverse women leaders face in their communities when it comes to accessing a space at the decision making table. This also means that it is time that inclusivity is included in our disaster risk management processes to ensure that the needs of diverse women are heard. Now, We will conclude with this segment and we will take a break now. Stay tuned because in our next segment, we again continue with conversations around disability rights and disaster risk management processes. Welcome back to the final segment of this episode of Radio with Pictures in conversation with the three women I have here. And in this segment, we are talking about safety, security, and protection with dignity when it comes to disasters. Kajal, when it comes to safety and security of young people, especially when we're talking about accessing evacuation centers, how has it been for young people in your community in accessing those centers?
I think evacuation center is not about that level because there is no security for us young women there. For example, the washrooms are outside, and schools are not meant to be for the evacuation center purpose. But still, in terms of disasters, we have to go there. There's no option. But then there's no security for us. And for us young women, we need security. Like they should at least build up, do something that the men go into the separate room and the mothers with the babies in the separate and the young ones separately, so that we can feel, the feeling of the safety is there with us. So I think that is the thing that has affected us young people the most.
Yes, and Lithia, we've also had previous conversations in our Radio with Pictures episodes that there is a call for review of evacuation centers and evacuation plans to be inclusive again of the needs of diverse women in our community. There has been sentiment shared that it is not inclusive, and again what Kajal just said, like schools are not sometimes meant to be evacuation centers because it doesn't have the resources. What are your views in regards to that?
In regards to people with disability, I think we have the same thing that Kajal just have mentioned about young youths, and that's also applied to people with disability. The most things that we don't have is our access. That I have been mentioned in the first place. Our access, it's not access, not accessing the room, even the for the restroom and the bathroom. We don't access to it. So that's why we want to strengthen up this morning about emphasizing it. If they could have rebuilt the schools again to be like in a proper and disability friendly evacuation center, then only then we can be part of that community being evacuated in that evacuation center. But most of the time we don't feel like coming to the evacuation center because of the safety of our life, the condition of lives that we are in.
Would you then say that violence would then be something that would really be
Yes.
topic to be interested in when it comes to that?
Yes, sometimes discriminating. We see that discriminating comes up into that kind of situation. We were pushed aside. Sometimes we pushed aside. Sometimes people don't bother if we are inside that evacuation center and we need to go out to evacuation, to restroom or bathroom. So in that kind of ways, we are not we don't feel like staying in that evacuation center because it is not access to us.
Timema, what would you say, preparing for the cyclone season in November, what would be your key recommendation when it comes to evacuation centers being inclusive?
Thank you, Nandini. For me, from rural communities, I think my community is one of the communities that doesn't have evacuation centers. And we have schools to go to, but we have a problem where we have to cross rivers to reach an evacuation center. And people in my communities, they are not in the habit of going to evacuation centers as well. So before we reach November, I think awareness should be done for people in rural communities to make an effort to try to go to evacuation centers. And for access to evacuation center, I think accessibility is supposed to be there, and there should be respect and well secured for all diversities, whether it's disability, people with disability, or youths or young mothers. So when accessibility is there, then I can say that we are well secured.
So again, just reiterating that there needs to be safe and accessible evacuation centers to ensure that when evacuation centers become the safe place during disasters, it is actually safe. Now, before we conclude, what would be your key Women's Weather Watch messages? Timema?
For me, I think my key messages is for us to always be prepared. Cyclone season is approaching, and I think now is time for us to be prepared.
For me, I think some system should overlook and review the system of the evacuation center before this cyclone season, before November, so that it is easier for us to access the evacuation centers.
For me, and for mother persons with disability, I think for the Women's Weather Watch, I want to emphasize this morning is to should learn the different different signs of sending out informations to persons with disability. Example like for the hearing impairment, they can have SMS messages, and also like for the TV ones, they can put color coding. Color coding, because there's the hearing impairment, they can't hear what is going on in the TV. The only thing they can see is the color coding, so they will know the different colors according to the different times of disaster happening.
Okay, thank you, Lithia, and thank you for those conversations. That's our episode of Radio with Pictures for today. Thank you again, Timema, Lithia, and Kajal, for joining us on this episode of the new season of Radio with Pictures. Please don't forget, you can continue to follow the conversation. I'm sure that there were so many important points that were discussed, and you'd love to get it more of those issues that we're talking about. So join us via Twitter. Our handle is Femling Pacific, or log on to our Facebook page, and then of course you could tune into Femtalk 89 FM in Suva and Lambasa. Until the next time, thanks for your company, and bye for now.